Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Proverbs 29:18, and we're keeping pastors and Bible study leaders like you in mind for this one.
Yeah,
You already know the verse, where there is no vision, the people perish. But we're going beyond the surface level today.
right.
We've got a whole stack of sermons from different pastors all tackling this verse, and we're going to be uncovering the gems they use to bring this verse to life for their congregations.
It's so fascinating how such a short verse can inspire so many different interpretations. It's like each pastor took Proverbs 29:18 and saw a different facet of it,
Yes.
a different angle to explore with their people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. What were some of the more unexpected interpretations that jumped out at you? What were some of the sermon illustrations or approaches that you thought were particularly creative?
Well, one common thread that emerges is this idea of vision as guidance.
Okay.
And several sermons use the analogy of a GPS,
Mm-hmm.
emphasizing how a God-given vision provides direction and purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
But they go beyond just stating the analogy.
Yeah.
They find ways to make it stick.
Okay.
So, for example, transforming faith from Renovation Church.
Oh.
They use different translations of the verse
Mm-hmm.
to show how vision doesn't just guide us towards something,
Right.
but it also restrains us from things that might lead us astray.
Oh, so it's like having boundaries
Yeah.
that keep us on the right path, not just a destination.
Exactly.
I could see that being a really helpful way to explain it to people who might be struggling with decision-making or feeling lost.
Exactly. And then you have embracing God's vision, faith over fear, from Reach Church Paramount.
Okay.
And they take a different approach with the GPS analogy,
Okay.
using the image of a baby growing into its purpose
Mm-hmm.
to illustrate how our vision might develop over time, even when we're afraid or unsure.
That's a great way to address the fear factor that can sometimes paralyze us when we're trying to discern God's will.
Right. They emphasize that it's about trusting God's plan and having faith that He will guide us, even if we can't see the full picture yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is that several sermons also tackled the question of what happens when we feel like we don't have that clear vision.
Yeah, that's a question I think a lot of people wrestle with.
Absolutely.
It's easy to talk about having a vision when you feel like you've got it all figured out.
Right.
But what about those times when you're feeling lost and directionless?
Yeah.
How did those sermons approach that?
Embracing God's vision, a call to action from Mark Lee, uses this incredibly vivid illustration of an Olympic marksman hitting the wrong target.
Wow.
Imagine they hit the bullseye.
Okay.
Perfect shot, but on something that doesn't matter.
Wow, that's a powerful visual.
Yes.
It really drives home the point that effort and skill aren't enough.
Right.
We need to be sure we're aiming at the right thing.
Exactly. And living purposefully, aligning with God's vision for our lives from Access Church, used a similar analogy, talking about how achieving something great, but outside of God's will for your life, is like hitting the wrong target.
Right.
It highlights the importance of making sure our vision, our goals, our ambitions are aligned with His purpose for us.
I'm curious, did any of the sermons offer specific advice on how to actually do that, how to align our vision with God's will?
Absolutely.
Because it's one thing to say it,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to actually live it out.
Absolutely. Rebuilding priorities. Aligning with God's kingdom from Field of Grace. Use that familiar GPS analogy,
Okay.
but with a twist.
Okay.
They focused on the importance of setting the right destination.
Mhm.
Asking, are we focused on building God's kingdom or chasing our own ambitions?
That's a great question to prompt some serious introspection, and I think it speaks to a common struggle that many of us face.
Yes.
The temptation to confuse our own desires with God's vision for us.
You're exactly right. And aligning vision with God's wisdom and purpose from Morning Star Church, Tampa. Really dug into that tension between personal ambition and God-given vision.
Yes.
Reminding us that true vision comes from godly wisdom, not just our own desires.
Did they offer any practical tips on how to tap into that godly wisdom? How to discern between our own wants and what God truly has for us?
They did, and in a really memorable way.
Right.
They used a surprising reference.
Okay.
The movie The Princess Bride.
Wait, really? The Princess Bride?
Mm-hmm.
How did they tie that into Proverbs 29:18?
Well, they used the character of Inigo Montoya, who spends his whole life seeking revenge.
Oh.
It's a clever way to illustrate how we can sometimes fixate on our own goals without considering God's bigger picture.
Right.
It's a reminder that our vision needs to be bigger than ourselves, rooted in something more profound than just our own desires.
That's such a creative approach.
Mm.
I love how they took something from popular culture
Yeah.
and used it to make a theological point.
Yes.
It's unexpected, but definitely effective.
It really highlights the power of storytelling.
Right.
When we can connect these biblical truths to stories and examples that people can relate to,
Yeah.
it makes the message much more impactful and memorable.
So we've talked about vision as guidance, the danger of hitting the wrong target, and the importance of aligning our vision with God's kingdom.
Right.
It's amazing how much depth and nuance there is to unpack within this one verse.
And we've only just begun. There are even more fascinating insights and interpretations waiting to be discovered within these sermons.
Well, I'm definitely eager to hear more. Let's continue our deep dive into Proverbs 29:18 after a quick...
And what's so interesting is that many of these pastors, they go beyond the surface level of Proverbs 29:18.
Right.
They actually dive into the nuances of the original Hebrew.
I love it when we can get into the original languages.
Oh, it's so good.
It adds such a rich layer of meaning.
Yeah. For instance, divine vision. Guidance for life's journey from Greater El Bethel.
Okay.
They really unpacked that Hebrew word for vision.
Oh, what do they highlight about that Hebrew word?
They emphasize that it implies a revelation from God.
Oh,
Not just some human-generated goal or ambition. It's about receiving a clear message from him,
Right.
a specific calling on our lives.
So it's not just about having a vision for our lives, but having a vision that's rooted in divine inspiration.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they really brought that point home with some compelling illustrations.
Okay.
One that stuck with me was this analogy of a church service
Okay.
where the sermon feels like it's speaking directly to you, addressing your specific struggles and needs.
Yes.
You know that feeling?
Absolutely. Those moments when it feels like the pastor somehow knows exactly what you're going through
Right.
and is speaking directly to your heart.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It's incredibly powerful.
And that's what they were getting at.
Right.
True vision should resonate with your deepest longings and align with your God-given purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's that feeling of personal connection with God's message that's so crucial.
It's not just about a set of goals, but a deep sense of knowing that you're on the path he has for you.
Exact.
That reminds me of another theme that popped up in a few sermons.
Yeah.
This idea of vision as a source of clarity and direction, especially when it comes to navigating the challenges of life and avoiding sin.
Yes. Seeking God's faithfulness and living in holiness from Reach City Church Cleveland really hit on that.
Okay.
They argued that without divine revelation, we're essentially stumbling around in the dark, making wrong choices, falling into sin.
Right.
They compared it to like trying to navigate a maze
Okay.
without a map.
You might eventually find your way out,
Maybe.
but it's going to be a much harder journey, and you're bound to hit a few dead ends along the way.
Exactly. And they offered some advice on how to avoid those spiritual dead ends.
Okay. How do we do that?
They used a really interesting illustration,
Okay.
the rhinoceros.
A rhinoceros. Okay. I'm intrigued.
So they pointed out that rhinos, despite their size and strength, have terrible eyesight.
Okay.
They can charge at incredible speeds,
Yeah.
but they can't distinguish between objects just a short distance away.
Wow.
So even though they have physical vision, they lack the clarity to effectively navigate their surroundings.
That's a pretty powerful image.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we can be like that spiritually.
Yeah.
We might be moving forward in life, but without God's vision to guide us, we're bound to make mistakes and face unnecessary difficulties.
Exactly. And then they contrasted the rhino with bats,
Oh,
who use echolocation to navigate even in complete darkness.
right.
So it's a powerful metaphor for how we can rely on God's guidance even when we can't see the path ahead clearly.
So it's not just about having any vision, it's about having the right kind of vision.
Yes.
One that's based on divine revelation
Yeah.
and allows us to see clearly even when things are uncertain.
And it's about understanding that discerning this vision might not always be easy or obvious.
Right.
It requires seeking God's guidance, listening to his voice, and being willing to step out in faith even when we don't have all the answers.
It's about trusting the process, even when it's messy and confusing.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another really important point that several sermons touched on.
Okay.
The danger of mistaking our own ambitions for God's vision for us.
I think that's a trap that's so easy to fall into, especially in today's world.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much pressure to achieve success and reach our full potential that it can be hard to distinguish between what we truly desire
Right.
and what God has called us to.
You hit the nail on the head. It's tempting to think that if we just work hard enough and set our minds to it,
Yeah.
we can achieve anything we want.
Right.
But Aligning our lives with God's just vision from Destiny Church really challenged that notion.
Okay.
They reminded us that true vision is about aligning with God's will, not chasing after our own desires,
Right.
no matter how noble they might seem.
So how do we actually do that? How do we know if we're pursuing a God-given vision or just following a personal ambition? Did the sermons offer any practical guidance on making that distinction?
The emphasis seemed to be on seeking God's wisdom above all else,
Okay.
not relying on our own logic or intuition,
Right.
but truly asking God for direction and guidance. Aligning vision with God's wisdom and purpose from Morningstar Church, Tampa, really drove that point home.
Okay.
They reminded us that God's ways are higher than our ways,
Right.
and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts.
It's a good reminder that we can't always rely on our own limited understanding
right.
to figure out God's plan for us.
Yeah.
We need to be willing to surrender our plans
Yes.
and submit to his will.
And sometimes that means letting go of our own ambitions,
Right.
even if they seem good or exciting on the surface.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that God's vision for us might be completely different from what we imagined,
Right.
and being okay with that.
It's about trusting that God's plan is ultimately the best plan, even if we don't fully understand it.
Exactly. You know, one thing that strikes me about these sermons is that they're not just about teaching on Proverbs 29:18.
Right.
They're about providing tools to actually apply it to our lives.
It's like they're giving us handles to grab onto.
Yeah, like embracing new beginnings, made for more from Reach Church Paramount.
Okay.
They gave this great acronym to help people align with God's vision.
What's the acronym?
It's START.
START.
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
It stands for stopping excuses,
Okay.
taking inventory,
Yeah.
acting in faith,
Okay.
refocusing and trusting God.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so practical.
Right.
It's about recognizing that this isn't just a one-time decision, but an ongoing journey
Yes.
that requires intentionality and effort.
And a willingness to embrace the new beginnings that God has for us,
Right.
even when we've messed up or taken a wrong turn.
Which reminds me of the powerful theme of redemption that ran through many of these sermons.
Oh, absolutely. Sermons like Unlocking the New Covenant Through Redemptive Revelation from Grace Life Church of Valdosta
Okay.
did a deep dive into that, reminding us that God's vision for us is always rooted in his love and grace.
Right.
He's not waiting to punish us for our mistakes,
Yeah.
but longing to restore us and lead us into a life of purpose.
That's such an important message, and it really speaks to the heart of what Proverbs 29:18 is all about.
Yeah.
It's not just about having a vision. It's about having a vision that's rooted in God's redemptive plan for our lives.
It's a message of hope and possibility, a reminder that even when we feel lost or directionless,
Yeah.
God has a plan for us,
Right.
and he's eager to guide us into it.
So we've talked about vision as guidance, clarity, alignment with God's will, a source of new beginnings, and a path to redemption.
Right?
It's amazing how much depth and richness there is to this seemingly simple verse.
And we're still not done.
Oh, there's more.
There are even more fascinating insights and interpretations to uncover from these sermons.
Let's keep diving in then.
It struck me as we've been going through all these different sermons that so many of them emphasize vision as more than just a concept. It's a catalyst for action.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like having a great idea, but never doing anything with it.
Right.
What good is a vision if it just stays in our heads?
Exactly.
Did any of the sermons offer, like, concrete steps for putting vision into practice?
Absolutely. Embracing God's vision, a call to action from Where Clicktonly.
Okay.
They really challenge listeners to move beyond passive dreaming and actively pursue their God-given visions step by step.
Okay.
They even brought in a secular illustration
Okay.
to drive home the point.
Oh, I like it when they do that.
Yeah, the story of Olympic marksman Matt Emmons.
Oh, right. The one who accidentally shot at the wrong target.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a powerful reminder that even when we have the talent and the drive, we need to be absolutely certain we're aiming at the right thing.
Yeah. It's not just about hitting the bullseye.
Right.
It's about hitting the bullseye on the target God has set for us.
Exactly. And speaking of targets,
Okay.
several sermons highlighted the importance of aligning our vision with God's kingdom.
Yes. Rebuilding priorities. Aligning with God's kingdom from Field of Grace.
Yes, that one was beautiful.
Yeah.
Really unpacked that concept.
It's a good reminder that our vision should be a more than just personal fulfillment or success.
Right. They challenged listeners to ask themselves, how does my vision contribute to building God's kingdom? How does it bring glory to his name?
That's a powerful question to reflect on, and it can be easy to get caught up in our own ambitions and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Did any of the sermons offer any specific advice on how to stay focused on God's kingdom amidst all the distractions of our culture?
Seeking God's faithfulness and living in holiness from Reach City Church, Cleveland, used a phrase that really stuck with me.
Okay.
They said, freedom without direction is still bondage.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
Isn't it?
It makes you think about how even if we achieve all of our personal goals,
Uh-huh.
if it's not aligned with God's will, we're still ultimately enslaved to our own limitations.
True freedom comes from aligning with God's vision, even if it means letting go of some of our own desires
Right.
and embracing a path that might not be as glamorous or exciting.
So it's not just about having a vision. It's about having the right kind of vision.
Absolutely.
A vision that aligns with God's purpose and sets us free to experience true fulfillment.
And that brings us to what might be the most important takeaway from all these sermons.
Okay.
The absolute necessity of seeking God's guidance in every aspect of our
You're
vision.
not just assuming we know what he wants,
Right.
but actively taking the time to pray,
Yeah.
listen to his voice,
Yes.
and seek his wisdom.
Divine vision, guidance for life's journey from Greater El Bethel was particularly strong on that point,
Okay.
emphasizing that God is the ultimate source of vision,
Right.
and we need to be in constant communication with him if we want to stay on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
They even compared it to having a GPS,
Okay.
but forgetting to plug in the destination.
But we might be moving, but we won't end up where we're supposed to be. It makes you realize how vital it is to cultivate a habit of prayer and Bible study, to really spend time with God and seek his direction for our lives.
It's in those quiet moments of seeking him that we gain clarity about his
Yeah.
will and receive the guidance we need to truly fulfill our purpose.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Proverbs 29:18, what's the one thing you hope listeners will take away from all these different perspectives?
I think the most important takeaway is that vision is not just a nice idea or a motivational concept.
Right.
It's absolutely crucial
Mhm.
for a life of purpose and meaning.
Yes.
And when that vision is rooted in God's will and guided by his wisdom, it has the power to transform not only our own lives, but the world around us.
That's beautifully said. And as pastors and Bible study leaders, it's our privilege to help others discover that vision, equip them with the tools to pursue it,
Yes.
and encourage them along the way.
Absolutely. It's about empowering others to live out their God-given purpose and experience the fullness of life he has for them.
It's been an incredible journey exploring Proverbs 29:18 with you today.
It has.
We hope you've been inspired to seek God's vision for your own life and to help others do the same.
Yes.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep diving deep into the truths of God's Word.